A very warm welcome to the Cloud Council, the place where business IT leaders come and share their real life experiences. These are the people who have been there and done that we can all learn from. On this show, the head of IT for the Wellcome Trust is joining us. A £27 billion portfolio under management, a museum, a library, a philanthropy organisation, unique in that it all comes under one umbrella and all the technology has to be run by one very big department. And it's led by Eileen Jennings-Brown. Eileen, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Wow, what an introduction. I'm very well, thank you. And thanks very much for having me, Andy. I much appreciate it. I'm very pleased to join the Cloud Council show.
Well, thank you. Now, the Wellcome Trust, the word unique is often overused, but there is no other word to describe the kind of multitude of verticals that squidge underneath the name Wellcome Trust. Can you just give us a little bit of a flavour, and for those who aren't familiar with it, what those verticals are and how maybe they interact?
Yeah, it's a really good point you make, actually, because not many people have heard of Wellcome Trust, and it tends to be people who are in academia who have heard of the Wellcome Trust, and that's more to do with the fact that we would typically fund research into science and health. But in order to be able to do that, we do have a £27 billion portfolio that we manage ourselves. So we give £1 billion a year away into funding this research, and that's the philanthropic arm of the organisation. We do look after our own endowment, so we have an investments division, and we are under all of the same regulations that are required in order to run financial institutions to a degree. And then we have a museum where we can show all the artefacts that have been collected throughout the lives of people across Wellcome, of researchers, of scientists. We've got some amazing artifacts in the museum. We've got Marie Curie's diary, and it has to, this is my favourite all-time artifact actually, but it has to be kept in an iron sealed unit because it's still so radioactive. We've got Darwin's walking sticks. We've got all sorts of interesting things. And then we have pictures and art, and we have a library as well, so people can come in, they can have access to the information, to our books. We are currently digitizing our library to make it a more inclusive experience for people. But yeah, we are complex.
In some regards, and we don't have to get deep into your exact cloud strategy at this point, but you are going to have, from a banking point of view, certain privacy and data access elements that are going to be needed probably at super high speed, probably particularly with COVID, diversified into a number of areas. Meanwhile, as you described, the library, I suppose the traditional Dewey system is now updated from a cataloguing point of view. And as you said, there's kind of technical day-to-day AV, there's an office environment, remote working. So how do you even begin to design a system that's going to serve all of these stakeholders, particularly given they're going to be very, very different individuals with different needs?
So yes, we do have different personalities, we have different demands, different requirements. Because we've touched on the whole banking side of it and the complexities around designing something for everyone, what we have done is we have our core systems that everybody is offered. So those are your usual email, it's your file and storage, communications platforms. But then for these other divisions who have very specific requirements, we're building teams of specialists that can then service those specific requirements. And we're doing a study of what is appropriate for our investments division, as an example, to make sure that they're getting the right response, the right technology, even the right architecture and access, speed of access. So we're doing a study to make sure that whatever we've got is appropriate for them, and where it's not, we will then come up with a new service design or adjust the service design and make it fit for purpose for them. We do have an underlying strategy from the Digital and Technology Division, and there are 4 pillars within the strategy, which is fit for purpose. It is inspiring products, things that people want to use. We are using data to inform decisions, and then simplifying everything. So that feeds into the whole automation piece that I particularly like. But by applying these 4 principles to everything that we're doing, regardless of whether you are a banker or you are a creative type in our museum, we have the principle, which is we've got to make it fit for purpose, and we want to make it as easy and accessible as possible.
In terms of business modernisation, we find ourselves at the moment, whenever you guys are watching this, still deep in lockdown 2. But in terms of your role, you were brought in to modernise and update and transform digitally the organisation. Is there anything even 8 months ago that wouldn't have been possible now? And if so, maybe can you talk us through some of the steps that you actually, in hindsight, have looked at and thought, my goodness, thank God we did it in those orders?
That's a lovely, lovely way of putting it, because we think about that almost every day, and we do reflect and we do say, thank goodness. So you asked the question about 8 months ago. 8 months ago, we were in the building. We had some very traditional processes in place. And if somebody's computer broke, they would actually bring it in person to the service desk and we'd physically hand them a new one. We now don't do that, and we're able to replace equipment automatically and remotely without any access to the building being required. So that's a thing that we couldn't do 8 months ago. The thing that I love about that is that that was always the direction of travel that we were going. It was to automate the low value tasks. It's not in the best use of our time and expertise physically replacing a piece of kit. So let's get somebody else to do it, and let's provide them with what our build looks like, as an example. So that is a new process that we put in place that's here to stay. That's never going to go back. So that we have tried to roll forward with some of these activities that were done in the building, but do it in a way that it is sustainable, and that is our new future. Going back to about 2.5, 3 years ago, it's a very, very different picture. At that point in time, only 150 people would have been able to work remotely, and it would have been painful for them to even get access in the first place. We have, the team have done an outstanding job, and I need to give praise to the team here, because it's their efforts that have put the new technology in place, and they have had a focus and a drive on cloud first. So we think about buy, not build. We look at, is it fit for purpose? Fit for purpose is, I can work remotely, there's some criteria that equates to fit for purpose. And we've done a big effort in educating the organisation on being more digitally aware. So 3 years ago, none of that existed. Today, everybody can work anywhere, and that has been a measure of success for the digital and technology division in terms of Wellcome today, and that's one way that we were able to measure success. And the praise is there. We were on the back foot for quite a long time, and I'll be honest, it was tough. And driving a cloud first strategy, driving a culture change, driving new ways of working, introducing new methodologies and new technologies, getting everyone up to speed. It was tough. And we had lots of growing pains. We had people around the organisation who didn't necessarily like the change that we were going through, because they wanted the hand holding and the gold plated white glove treatment, and because we did that for everyone. So we've had to spend a lot of time helping people come on the journey with us. But the working remotely for the last 8 months has actually been the defining moment where everyone has realised all that pain that we all went through together is why they're able to work so seamlessly today.
You talk about some of the challenges. Can you articulate maybe 1 or 2 things that were specifically difficult to do? And these could be from infrastructure, they could be a cultural shift. And then in a moment, I then want to talk to you about the leadership at Wellcome and I guess how they perceive the IT transformation.
What we found was that there are pockets of people who've been there for a very long time, especially academics, and then there are pockets of people who are desperate for change or are used to seeing change and are willing to embrace it. So we leveraged those to try and help champion the change and why the change was necessary. And something else that I observed was those who were new into business were very comfortable with operating IT themselves, with self-service, whereas because Wellcome had evolved over time and those people had grown with Wellcome, but not much had really changed, a lot of the staff in Wellcome were handed everything. And so, I mean, even up until we left the building, if somebody wanted a new mobile phone, we would configure it for them and give them it. But you can go down to the local phone shop and you can buy it, and you have to do it yourself. So there was this disconnect between what was going on in society and then what happened in Wellcome. And a lot of what happened in Wellcome was more to do with, this is how it had always been. So that we had that to contend with as well, and just help people understand why it was in their interests to become more digitally savvy. One of the practices that I personally like to adopt, which I haven't done too much of, is to make the way somebody always does something harder, because we want to drive a behaviour change in adopting the technology. So one of the things that we have been trying to do is encourage more self-service for, I have a problem and I need to report it to the service desk. And this is more in the specifics. So I'm trying to make it harder to phone us, because if it's harder to phone us, then you're going to get a bit fed up hanging on the phone for 20 minutes or whatever that means. And actually, you're just going to want to go to the portal and log a ticket yourself. So try and make if you want to change a behavior, then try and make something that's existing, which is the thing you want to change, harder. And the thing that you would like people to start doing, make that easier and make it more intuitive, and just bake it into the way that they might go about doing their business. So that was, that's kind of all of Wellcome, that we're trying to do that. And we are trying to do that subtly, you know, not so much in your face, hey everyone, we're going to make calling us harder. We're just trying to slowly introduce these things. Doing it this way makes it longer, but it also means that when people reflect, they don't really notice it. And it's not unless they look back 3 years ago and they go, wow, actually, yeah, 3 years ago, only 150 people could log in. Now everyone can do it. They don't really notice the change. So I think the subtle culture change has worked for us. Sometimes people might want to go in with a big bang. I completely understand that. But having learned the way Wellcome is and the culture and how long people had been at Wellcome, a big bang was not necessarily the right way to tackle some of those challenges.
We are now going to ask your binary questions. So quick as you like, straight gut feel, from the heart answer. Netflix or cinema?
Cinema.
Steve Jobs or Bill Gates?
Steve Jobs.
Karaoke or karaoke?
Karaoke. Champagne
reception, pint in a pub garden?
Ooh. Champagne in a pub garden.
Like your answer. Are you a saver or a spender?
I'd love to be a saver, but I'm a little bit of a spender.
Black pudding or square sausage?
Oh, don't do this to me. Square sausage.
Working from home or working buzz in the office?
Oh, home.
Weekend break or month-long adventure?
Month-long adventure.
And finally, fringe or hogmanay?
Fringe.
Those, Eileen Jennings-Brown, are your binary questions. Well, the organisation I know has evolved, and it's well over 100 years old. And so you did have some legacy issues in the mindset, in the history, and the perception. I suppose, briefly, to talk about the leadership team there, was technology and digital change something that they embraced? I mean, in terms of the value of the business, it's certainly something that all of us here at the Cloud Council highly value. But internally, was there a buy-in to your strategy on the grounds that when they employed you, they said to you, right, we're giving you the keys, we want you to make changes?
So yes, but it was a long sell. So at Wellcome, we have a CIO, and it's a gentleman called James Thomas, and he came in 4 years ago, and he was the one that said, we're going to break this traditional IT that we do and we gold plate everything. We're going to move to the cloud. About 8 months later, I came along, and when I joined, the ambition was fantastic and they knew what they wanted to do. But the strategy was very nascent at that point in time. It was just a couple of thoughts on a bit of paper. So when I came along and they said, we want to transform and we want to agile work and we want to do this and we want to do all these things, I helped them build out what that strategy, what the substance to that strategy actually needed to look like. And I worked with the leadership team and the technology, digital and technology at that point in time, in order to pad out and build out the strategy and to articulate it to the board. And so that was the toughest bit. So I think we went through about 17 iterations of that strategy.
Wow.
It was a long slog, but it was worth it, because it was part of helping the leadership team in Wellcome understand the value that digital and technology transformation can bring into their lives. So a lot of the dialogue I was having was about what's in it for me, make it relevant to me, make sure that give examples about how this is going to improve things for my team, for my life. And a lot of time was spent thinking about that and articulating that in strategy. So by the time the strategy was actually signed off, it had been a year in writing, a year in selling it, a year in engaging with the organization. Signing it off was literally just a tick box exercise at the end of the day, because we had done so many iterations of it. And we were already living and breathing the strategy and working in that way and talking and using that language, so that it just became part of how we operated. A defining moment for that strategy was when people started telling me about it, and I thought, this is fantastic. I wrote it. So this is brilliant. You're telling me about the strategy. You're telling me, is that fit for purpose? Is this going to simplify our lives? How is that an inspiring product? So it's just part of the common language now. That was an exciting moment for me, the first time somebody started telling me about the strategy.
I think that story, which is fantastic, is going to be recognised by a lot of the people who are watching this. So thank you for sharing that and giving us some more details about the Wellcome Trust. We are going to have Eileen back on other shows when you can find out more about not her just personally, but also her leadership style, and some more tips on how to take a digital transformation and push it not only into the hardware, into the software, but into the people and the mindset of a big organisation. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you guys for watching the Cloud Council.